Welcome to Matters Financial with Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I participated yesterday in an inside story on Al Jazeera regarding BRICS. Some economists expected Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa to lead the world to new economic heights. But as the BRICS bloc met for its 8th summit in India's state of Goa, those hopes appear to be fading. The other guest was Sriram Chaulia, the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, myself, and Anastasia Nevesvetai-Iova, Director of City Political Economy Research Centre, the City University London. The link is up there on the website if you care to have a look. Macro thoughts, my thoughts go back to 10-year gilts. 10-year gilt yields have risen 37 basis points in the last 2 weeks, the biggest 2-week rise in over 3 years. Let's see what this week brings us. On the 12th of September, I'd said my second trade of the year is to buy put options on 10-year bonds. Because I said when this pops, the wizardry won't work anymore. And at that moment, there is going to be one heck of a move. On the 9th of October, I said the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Carney and the Bank of England are left with no good options. And I said gilts are a monster short. The sell-off in the UK government bond market is accelerating. The yields are shooting higher. All this while the pound remains extremely weak. A bit of a spat between the Bank of England and Theresa May. This is Carney. The objectives are what are set by the politicians. The policies are done by technocrats. Policymakers would not take instruction from politicians on how to do their jobs. Mr. Carney also defended the bank's independence, insisting that policymakers would not take instruction from politicians. UK gilts have soared on hard Brexit and inflation fears. The yield on the 10-year UK gilt climbed to 1.10%, a rise of 7 basis points after touching its highest level since Britain's June vote to leave the EU. Gilts have become ensnared in the backdraft of the pound's plunge. The weaker currency has raised import prices, and a key market measure of UK inflation expectations has climbed to its highest level since early 2014. Alberto Gallo, partner at Algebris Investments, said Mr. Carney's comments were the latest blow for a gilts market already rattled by the prospect of a hard Brexit, and a reported comment from an S&P analyst that sterling may lose its reserve status and spur a reduction in holdings of UK assets by central banks. Analysts at Bank of America Merrill Lynch said there was a looming risk that overseas investors could go on strike following a loss of confidence in the government's perceived strategy to pursue a clean break with the EU. The gilt market's reliance on foreign funding is a big part of the UK's broader reliance on the kindness of strangers, said Sebastian Cross. Since a low of 0.51% for the 10-year gilt in August, selling pressure has steadily increased. Market expectations of inflation have jumped, and the UK's 5-year break-even rate, a gauge of price expectations derived from the yield difference between conventional and index-linked bond gilts, has climbed above 3% to the highest level since early 2014. I'm looking for a move considerably higher, as you can see. I have been for a while. Put up a diagram of yields from Holger and refer you to my article on the 10th of October where I said the falcon cannot hear the falconer, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The centre cannot hold. United Kingdom runs a £100 billion current account deficit, and debt to GDP is somewhere around 90%. On the 26th of September, I said gilt yields are being artificially suppressed by the Bank of England will be impossible to suppress once we get a big inflation print. And then on the 12th of September, I spoke about how what is clear is that we are at the fag end of this party. A lot of risk calculations are based on value at risk. Essentially, you overlay a volatility measure over the portfolio and you calculate how much money is on the line. Central banks have suppressed volatility, therefore, in real terms, investors are now holding bigger positions at these current artificially suppressed levels. If volatility spikes, positions are going to be reduced en masse. Or to put it another way, to borrow the lyrics from the Eagles' song Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling with pink champagne on ice. And she said, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the night man. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Home thoughts return to Kapuściński's The Emperor, the Downfall of an Autocrat, published in 1978, the analysis of the decline and fall of Haile Selassie's regime in Ethiopia. First of all, one can't unmask oneself too early, showing the rapacity for power, because that galvanizes competitors, making them rise to combat. They will strike and destroy the one who had moved to the fore. No one should walk in step for years, making sure not to spring ahead, waiting attentively for the right moment. In 1930, this gay brought His Majesty the crown, which he kept for 44 years. Have a look at this aerial report from the Tsavo Conservation Area from the 14th of October 2016. Highlights included a sighting of lions basking on a sandy beach on the Athi River, a honey badger near Dugard's Falls, a melanistic serval cat, several sightings of free-range black rhinos in Tsavo East, and a pack of over 40 wild dogs in Tsavo West. Political reflections. Pro-government forces cleared the area around Iraq's eastern Saladin province ahead of the battle for Mosul. It looks like the Iraqis have real momentum behind them. Although the likelihood of a Trump presidency is declining, the consequences are becoming more serious. This is Nate Silver after Trump said that the election is going to be rigged. Facts have nothing to do with it at this moment. This is amazing, the complete list of Bloomberg headline flashes from Trump's speech today took me back to that quote. One of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. This is from the U.S. Army War College Quarterly Report of 1997. The U.S. officer assigned to the Deputy Chief of Staff, intelligence charged with defining the future of warfare, wrote, one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. The information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, the author suggests, but will be spawned, like any Hollywood drama, out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, greed, emotions rather than strategy, will set the terms of information warfare struggles. Trump has lashed out at his accusers, saying the allegations are all lies, phony accusations of inappropriate sexual contact leveled by several women, 2 more of whom came forward on Friday. And I think, it is gratuitous abuse, like she was not good looking enough, which is really plain mind-boggling from a politician. Have a look at this, the BRICS post President Putin in India for the BRICS 2016 summit and bilateral talks with Indian Prime Minister Modi. Modi made some remarks just hours after he launched a scathing but unnamed attack on Pakistan, calling it the mothership of terrorism, with whom extremist nodules across the world are linked. Xiamen, that is a beautiful coastal city in southeast China, will host the next BRICS summit in 2017. Syria talks underway in Lausanne. Have a look at the photograph of lots of sworn enemies across the table. And have a look at these from Afro data charts, battles between state and non-state groups in Africa in the first half of 2016. Distribution of African cities with populations of more than 500,000, very interesting, a lot of people following the urban density model in order to look for consolidated markets in Africa. Comparison of historical GDP growth rates to African country stability rankings, this is via McKinsey. International markets, bond bears, I suppose, I'm one of those, are out of hibernation and are hungry. Feed your inner bond bear by selling 10-year gilts and 10-year bunds versus the US Treasury, says Morgan Stanley. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro is below 110, 109.85. Dollar index at a 7-month high, 98.07. Japanese yen, 104.18. Swissy, 0.9892. The pound, 121.62. The Aussie, 0.7605. India rupee 66.805. South Korean won 1142.71. The rial 320.43. Egyptian pound 890.26, the rand 1433.12. It's been a crazy fortnight for the pound. Have a look at this chart from Bloomberg. Let's see where we go from here. I think we're dropping below 120, I'm afraid, now. The dollar is at a 7-month high. Have a look at the Bloomberg dollar index. Pretty pleased with that because I saw it sort of holding above key support and we're now back near the highs. Euro bears reawaken, common currency has dropped below 110. Have a look at more shorts have been put on it. Let's see what it does from here. Euro house of cards to collapse, warns the ECB's prophet Otmar Issing. One day the house of cards will collapse, Professor Otmar Issing. Towering figure in the construction of a single currency. The central bank already holds over 1 trillion euros in bonds bought at artificially low or negative yields, implying huge paper losses once interest rates rise again. And exit from QE is more and more difficult as the consequences potentially could be disastrous, he says. Dollar yen, have a look at this 5-day chart. Looks like it's going to try and test 105.50 kind of area. And then Paul Virilio's on my mind, wealth is the hidden side of speed, and speed the hidden side of wealth. Moving on to commodity markets, gold was last trading at 1255.55. It's trying to find some support at these levels. Oil investors have had a wild 2 months. Have a look at this chart. Crude oil trading around just New York crude oil just above $50.50, 50.53. Let's move on to Africa. An interesting report. Scientists working in Tanzania have catalogued a large and extremely rare trove of human footprints left behind some 5,000 to 19,000 years ago. A group of people slogged their way across muddy terrain along the southern shore of Lake Natron. The more than 400 footprints are located at a site called Ngare Serra, not far from a volcano known as Oldonyo Lengai, the Mountain of God. These aren't the oldest known prints made by modern humans. That distinction belongs to Eve's footprints, a set of prints discovered in South Africa in 1995 that date back about 117,000 years. Pretty incredible, isn't it? There's one area where there are so many prints, we've nicknamed it the dance hall because I've never seen so many prints in one place. It's completely nuts. DRC's and crisis elections are delayed. The political crisis in the DRC deepened on Sunday after the ruling coalition and some smaller opposition parties agreed to delay presidential and parliamentary elections by 18 months to April 2018. That's not going to go down well. I wrote about Ethiopia this weekend, and let me read you my piece. Ethiopia has always loomed large in my imagination from the time at prep school when my Ethiopian friend Azana Haile could not go home and came to spend the vacation with us in Mombasa. I recall reading The Emperor by Ryszard Kapuściński, and in that book Kapuściński recounts the tale of Lulu, Haile Selassie's lapdog that was allowed to piss on the shoes of dignitaries, and the courtier whose job for 10 years was to wipe those shoes clean with a satin cloth. That book also speaks to how the cushion bearer of the emperor was very short and therefore had to be perched on cushions so as not to be beneath his subjects, became an all-powerful figure in the imperial court. Kapuściński was subsequently trashed for his poetic license in his reportage, but I accept his mea culpa. You don't understand a thing. I'm not writing so the details add up. The point is the essence of the matter. Of course, Bob Geldof, once of the Boomtown Rats, also inserted himself into this Ethiopian montage of mine with his totemic "Do They Know It's Christmas?" I first visited Addis Ababa in 2005. It was eerie and disconcerting, sitting in the wonderfully well-appointed Sheraton Hotel, perched on the hill, and knowing that an almighty fracas had taken place. Near enough 200 people had been shot dead a few short weeks before. It took me about 3 hours to send an email. The ruling party, the EPRDF, which overthrew the Derg and Mengistu Haile Mariam in 1991, brooked no dissent then. We are more than a decade down the road from that time, and what is clear now is that the dissent has metastasized to the point that the regime has seen fit to impose a 6-month state of emergency. Ethiopia has been a sub-Saharan African poster child with real GDP growth averaging 10.9% between 2004 and 2014. Many folks tout a double-digit growth rate, but the Ethiopians have done it, and not just for a brief moment, but for more than a decade. Ethiopia was measured as the second poorest country in the world in 2000 and was widely expected to reach middle-income status by 2025. Ethiopian Airlines crisscrosses the African skies. Just a few days ago, on October 5, the Ethiopian government unveiled the country's new $3.4 billion railway connecting the capital Addis Ababa to Djibouti on the Red Sea. Every multinational company I came across was hightailing it up there to set up shop. Kenyan banks were salivating at the prospect of unlocking this market opportunity. Justin Lin, the former World Bank chief economist, spoke of how Ethiopia was in prime position to reap the transfer of low-cost Chinese manufacturing from China into Africa. When I saw the results of the last election, where the ruling party won 100% of the seats in parliament, I thought to myself, why would you want to publish a result like that, which is not only not credible, it's incredible. However, the government got a free pass from the international community, not least because Ethiopia occupies a strong geopolitical position. It has been seen as a bulwark against Islamic fundamentalism and is able to marshal and project a compelling military spear in the region. The government was able to also point at the trajectory of its growth and say, look at the parabola of our GDP. However, as Maplecroft-Verisk said, Ethiopia's reputation for stability has been shattered by an escalating series of protests in Oromia and Amhara regions. The government is talking about a number of around 500 when it comes to protesters killed over the last few months. Most observers I speak to are talking of at least 10x. Foreign companies have come under attack. Fana Broadcasting reported on its website that 11 companies ranging from textile firms to a plastics maker to flower farms have been damaged or destroyed, while more than 60 vehicles have been torched. Dutch firm Selecti said its 300-hectare vegetable farm and warehouse had been plundered. Another Dutch firm, Africa Juice, said its factory had been partially destroyed. The manager of one of the Turkish company's textile firm, Sagan Dima, told Reuters this week at least a third of his factory was burned down. According to The Economist, one factor in the government's decision was a spate of attacks on holiday lodges at Lake Langano and on Turkish textile factories in Sabeta, both in the rest of Oromia region south of the capital, on October 5th. The attackers were well organized and armed, some of them reportedly mounted on motorbikes. These acts, officials suggest, were the final straw. In Virilio's book Speed and Politics, he says the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack, becomes, in other words, a producer of speed. By announcing a state of emergency, the government has doubled downing on its one golf club repression regime survival strategy and trusting that Kapuściński's dictum will apply. The crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, who say the revolution is over. The government need to change tack and effect a course correction, and history shows us that this course correction is one of the most difficult things to pull off. Pravin Gordhan said he has no intention of relinquishing his post unless the South African president fires him, but there's an almighty war going on. He's put forward a lot of documents which, by implication, paint the president in a very bad light. These are the Gupta documents. South African all shares up 0.89% this year, dollar rand 14.33. It's not going to recover anytime soon, the rand. Nigeria Trading Exchange calls on central bank to free the naira. Don't we all? The head of Nigeria's foreign exchange trading platform said the central bank is using strong moral suasion to prevent the naira from depreciating to a market-related level and called on the regulator to let the currency float freely. The market's dysfunction is hindering the country's economic recovery by deterring inflows from foreign investors and hurting manufacturers dependent on imports. What's happening now? It's not even a managed float, Onadela said. It's a complete mess. Nigerian all share down 2.73%. Nigeria's Buhari says his wife belongs to his kitchen. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index minus 11.25% this year. Excellent article in the Wall Street Journal about the most dangerous cup of coffee in the world. This is Bukavu, DRC. A dozen artisanal coffee aficionados from around the world hovered their noses above cups of steaming grounds and inhaled deeply. Then they tasted the coffee, swishing or chewing it, spit out the leftovers, and used calculators on their smartphones to tally a final score for each sample of beans. The jacaranda are in bloom. I like this photograph from the Dean of Strathmore, Jacaranda Propaganda, Strathmore Law. Kenya Airways chairman to step down this year, says the FT, Mr. Awori, who took over as chairman in November. Told the FT he would quit as chairman in this quarter, but he has denied it was in response to the demands from the pilots and outsourced staff. I took on the responsibility for a year to embed the turnaround plan. He said the half-year results show the plan is working. Figures show a reduction in net losses from 12 billion shillings to 5 billion, 4% rise in passengers and an increase in cabin load from 68% to 71%. On Friday, management said flights to Abuja, Gaborone would be suspended as part of the restructuring. It's a big mess. The share price is actually at a 3.5-month high and up 18.42% over the past 4 weeks. So obviously people seeing through the noise. Probably a wholesale outing of the management, new management, and thinking that those circumstances it might be worth picking it up. Nairobi all share down 5.61% this year. Nairobi NSE 20 down 19.13% this year. The Kenya Tea Development Agency is set to pay out 44.72 billion shillings in a second payment to smallholder tea farmers starting next Monday. This is the largest ever payout and will be distributed to various farmers' banks and SACCO accounts either Monday or Tuesday next week. Once again, thank you for stopping by and wish you a wonderful week.